Hello, good evening, brothers and sisters. This is Sister Arrow Bolas Peralta coming to you from the Aligni residence. The reason why we're here is because Brother Rolly Bolas has amassed a large collection of orchids and houseplants. And unfortunately, he cannot expand his little indoor garden because of space, and he would like to share with you some of the tips and tricks with taking care of orchids. And one of the things that we like about orchids is when we get them from a friend of ours, we buy them from either a box store or even like a home improvement store or garden store. They come in like this. They come in pretty little ceramic containers, but they have these little see-through containers in there. It's usually packed to the brim with either coconut fibers or sphagnum moss or some type of filler. One of the things you want to try to look is to see if these have mold. So you want to take all of this out. It does not hurt the plant. And one of the things that you need to know about orchids is it has to have an extensive root system. The root system itself has an indoor under the pot system and some aerial ones that seek out moisture. And orchids are called epiphytes. They really don't need to grow in soil. They don't even need a pot. Most of the times you see this in the wild, they're growing on the edge of a tree, on a vine, maybe in a rock. So therefore, these plants were shipped to us packed in these moss, reindeer moss, sphagnum moss, sometimes coconut husk. To me personally, I believe coconut husk is the best. They do also degrade, so some in time you have to replace them. Now I'm releasing some of these from the moss. In order for your orchids to survive, you must have several things in mind. A great root system, a vibrant root system in the bottom, and an aerial one, or an outside above the pot root system like this, in order for it to survive. Too much moisture can damage these. Think of it as like a nervous system. It has some, like the myelin sheath. Inside is a thin root system. This part here, it holds the moisture, so you don't have to soak these in water. This does not have to be soaking in water in order for it to grow. So it is important that we control the type of medium is being used. So here, I'm releasing some of this, letting it breathe out so that this has a chance. This is a Phalaenopsis, a miniature Phalaenopsis orchid, and it can go back to its little ceramic container, which is great. And it's actually better if it has aeration in the bottom. Let me show you the problems of some orchids that we encounter. So sometimes we have an orchid plant we get, and the flowers fall off. That's natural. Flowers can fall off. But here, this requires major treatment. You can see that? It's starting to have fungus. And this is still alive here, but look in this one. It's already dry. It's starting to die. So Brother Rolly has his little techniques in treating this, so hopefully it'll survive. One of the ones that he did bring back to life, mind you, some of these orchids are 3 or 4 years old. He has this in some coconut and some mulch bark. You see how robust this root system is? In the Philippines, I've seen plants without any potting at all. All it needed is some structure to hold the orchids. Again, these are Phalaenopsis. See the big broad leaves? And one of the other things that you gotta understand, in order for this plant to survive, the leaves have to grow, and the leaves have to grow the same size, or else, this plant might be distressed or in trouble. See this growth? Having another inflorescence, that means it's going to have another spike of flowers. The rule of thumb, we want you not to cut off when the flowers or blooms are spent or they've fallen off, try not to drop this off. Oh, got a little extra water in there. See how these inflorescence spikes? Try not to cut them off because orchids have little gifts for you. Let me show you a little gift an orchid gave us. This is called a keiki. Keiki is basically like a Japanese term for baby. Okay? So these orchids were actually probably sometime in the summer. I cut off or left the blooms to fall off. But here, see the keikis? They're starting to grow. And especially this one. This will develop its own root system. See the leaves? So therefore, don't cut them off. Here, I believe this is going to be another inflorescence right here. That will start growing and spike another bloom spike. Again, this is another one. This is over 4 years old. Okay, over 4 years old. Beautiful blossoms. Right? You don't need to drown them out. Okay? Aside from orchids, Brother Rolly has lovely plants like ferns. He has a nice collection of succulents. Later on, maybe in a future episode, we'll show you his different types of succulents. Some of his succulents are big mounds of echeverias, little tiny jade plants. I think some of you have been a recipient of his jade plant cuttings. So therefore, if he did not cut those jade plants, I believe the jade plant is probably going to be big enough to fill this camera screen. Now, we would like to show you how to make a gift basket. All right, some of the big gift baskets that you go around. I went to a box store recently, and I saw one of their orchid plants. One of the orchid plants consisted of one orchid plant and maybe a small indoor plant. And I think the one that they had was some type of aloe. So the orchid plant itself, retail was $19. And then the little plant here was 5 something. So 19 plus 5, let's say 24. Maybe the container's another 4. But they were selling it for $40. But that's only 2 items in there, 2 plants. So I'm going to show you how to make a dish garden. So in order to have a dish garden, you have to usually try to take the plants out of their pots, usually shocking them, you know, and sometimes the pretty flowers don't share the same watering cycle. Some plants don't like to be watered with the orchids. The orchids don't like to be touched by soil. So therefore, let me show you a method. This is actually a florist trick of doing a floral presentation with plants. So basically, you're bringing in the outdoors. Well, the outdoors right now is gloomy and dark, but right now we're going to bring in the tropics into the house, okay? And then I'll show you what we finish is going to be a lovely gift product. The vase I'm using is just a plastic vase. I got this from Lowe's, and I think there's only 14 or maybe from $9 to $14. Most importantly, there's no hole. I don't want it to have a hole. These have an options for you to punch a hole, but don't punch a hole because this is going to be an indoor product. And one of the things I'd like you to use, I'm sure everybody gets products from Amazon, right? I need you to use those little packing material so that we're going to make little cushions inside because we're basically staging these plants, okay? Now we begin with an orchid. The orchid, very delicate. Again, we inspect it to make sure it has the 2 components, the root system that we want, and then these are reusable. Nice vase, you can use it for something else, all right? So you have the nice root system. It's packed well, there's no mold. You have the aerated section, okay? And then with modern techniques, you can either do a design in the back, put the orchid in the back, or put the orchid in the middle, okay? We will adjust it as we go. Another plant I have here, let's put this orchid back where it is. Another I have is this really pretty pretty plant. You see this a lot in the malls, you know, with the indoor plant craze. You have so many selections that you can get to. This is it's called the Zambiculus, nickname ZZ. Okay, the Zambiculus zamifloria. So I call it ZZ plant. This is the ZZ plant. Some of these plants, you can keep them in their potted because the ZZ plant, they have a bulb system. The bulb system here for the ZZ, they collect their own water, okay? They collect their own water, and there's a bulb system here. So you don't want to overflower this. It'll macerate or make the root system mushy. It'll collect its own water supply. Another beautiful plant that you can add is this bird's nest fern. You notice you have the dark green, shiny foliage, then you have the lighter green, more chartreuse colors of the bird's nest fern. Okay, so it's starting to shape up here. Okay, I'll put the orchid last so that you can see what we're doing. Next, we have here the Fittonia. Okay, see the Fittonia? Can you notice that? We're adding different textures. We're adding different textures. Aside from textures, we're doing a lot of colors. Color scheme. You don't want a whole pot full of green. Okay, so you have here the Fittonia. Okay, and this is like an angel plant, the caladium. Some of these plants that come from Lowe's, they have a wick system, which is perfect because if you water the bottom of this pot, it'll just wick the moisture in. And again, another texture. You see that texture? We're breaking up this green here. Okay. Well, another thing. Well, I wanted to make sure I cover up everything at the edges. And I got this lovely little ivy. The beauty about these plants, when they get bigger by spring, take them outside. Okay? Take them outside. All right. We'll adjust them as we go. Okay? You notice I didn't take them out of the pots. I didn't take them out of the pots. Sometimes doing that will distress them, but aside from that, some of these plants have different watering cycles. Again, we want to make sure we promote those different watering cycles by keeping each plant in its own pot. Okay, now I'm going to reintroduce that orchid, which is now refusing to come out of the pot. Okay. So it's up to you to face which direction you want your orchid to go. Which one's going to be the front, which one's going to be the back. Okay, there you go. Just one part there. Okay, now it can't be all party in the back, no colors in the front. So we will introduce color. We will introduce color to the front. So our little miniature orchids that we groomed, we will tuck them in here. Okay, and as a florist, I just want to let you know orchids like to talk to each other. So you want to make sure the faces are facing each other. Okay, like now, you see that? Now, that took less than 10 minutes. I think I talked more than actually what I did. So, you see how that is growing up. Okay, I still have this plastic back here. You know, if you feel like you can pop them, go ahead and pop them. You don't need it. Okay, now you have your shears here. We use them as placeholders, but I like to keep them in there just to keep them airy. Okay. All right, our ZZ is here, and it's trying to lean over because ZZ sometimes can branch out. Okay. All right, we got those colors in there. And then we have another plant that we can place in here. We have another Phalaenopsis. Now, if I need a boost with height, I turn this upside down. in there, because it is a deep container. If I need to boost it up, there. Okay. So now I want to change my mind and put my big orchid in the center. And that's the beauty of it, because you didn't put it in soil, and these are all separate. You can rearrange things. Okay, orchid there. I'm going to color block and put the rest of my orchids here. And I'll show you how to anchor these, okay? That has served its purpose. And so I popped it. My place holder has served its purpose. Orchids like to talk to each other. They like to be shown. I don't know, sometimes these orchids have a mind of their own. If they're not being displayed or featured, they seem to be a little catty about it. Okay, so here we go. So now, if you look, this is the front, okay? I'll back it up a little bit. You see that the orchid's right there. So, you made your own floral garden. So these potted plants actually have a lovely feature. They come with chains like this. So you can actually hang this if you want, to get it out of the way of pets, animals, you know, other pets, children. And you also always have to look if your plants are toxic. Make sure they're not toxic to animals and humans, so that you can safely display your plants. Now, how do I finish this? How do I finish this to hide the different pots and pans? So we have in here just a regular moss. These are preserved moss. If you want to rehydrate these moss, you can let them soak overnight. Okay, moss can be rehydrated, and then we just use it to cover the backs to give it a finished florist look. You know, a lot of our plants like this anyway because it prevents dehydration. Okay? It prevents dehydration so that you don't have to water so much. You don't have to lose water frequently. Okay? Also cushion each other here. Cushion that. So pretty much the color scheme we did. See, we have moss here. The color scheme that we used. We have different greens, different shades of greens, different textures. You have a velvety Fitania here. You have the smooth, almost chartreuse bird's nest fern. You have the angel plant, almost a caladium. You have the ivy, the fern. You have the ZZ. You have your lovely orchid. Okay? So therefore, that's how we do that. How do we finish this up? We just spray it, mist it. Okay, we mist it so that it's hydrated. Some of these plants do burn easily in the direct sunlight. So remember, these are tropical plants we're bringing in as house plants. So therefore, you want to keep them away from direct sunlight. How do I dress this up? See this Tillandsia? Live lovely air plant, Tillandsia. Huh? See the Tillandsia? We can actually add, We can actually add this tillandsia to accent this little ugly plant. What do we use? We have bind wire that we can use. Bind wire is a wire that is a florist friend. Okay? It's actually paper wrapped wire. So we just tie it around the tillandsia. The tillandsia is an air plant. You see this, and then you see, if you notice, a lot of wedding bouquets now have different materials. You have pampas grass, you have succulents in their bridal bouquets. You have some of the air plants like tillandsia. Tillandsia can grow as big as a dinner plate. So therefore, you know, we get to accent. So see how? So this space right here didn't have anything. So now we have a tillandsia added in there. Okay? So an easy shortcut in making a dish garden without really digging into the soil, without using soil. Okay? And if you have any questions about how much each one cost, we can have that in our question and answer section. Okay? Some of these things, you know, one of the therapeutic benefits of plants, it really does make everybody happy. Even in the nursing field, even in hospitals, it was shown that patients that receive flowers or plants have a faster recovery time. And somehow, yellow flowers are more beneficial for patients when they have, when they're inpatient. So sunflowers, marigolds, even the lovely carnation, which is my favorite flower, they are wonderful, wonderful plants for someone who is not feeling well. Unfortunately, hospitals right now have rules that you can't send anybody flowers or plants or even get well things. Nothing can go in. So when they come home, or video, you send them a video of what you've created so that they can see that you were thinking of them. If you have any questions, other things that you can decorate this, if you have a low-lying pot, you can actually add river rocks, right? River rocks to your design. Another thing, when you when we just made this lovely little pot here, remember I have this extra pot that came with the orchids. What do I do with this? So it's a deep pot. It doesn't have any reservoir in the bottom, but I want to use it because it's lovely. You know, it's lovely. So what I'll use, if it, this one doesn't fit, right? This one fits, but it's too small. It's gonna sink. That's when it comes in with this. Okay, either that or a smaller container so that you can use it, right? At your desk at work or at your bedside. Plants make people happy. Plants are lovely companions, and be forgiving if they pass away or we accidentally not take care of them. There are other ways that you can, you know, if you feel like they're dying or they're drying out, the hope is not lost. You can just cut off the dead ends and then water. When you water it, let the water go through, let it drip out, and then it will come back to life. All right. Plants are very forgiving. Plants are plentiful, and there's a craze now. People even order plants from out of the country. Just beware. Make sure it has a certificate of like a naturalization or like a DNR type of certificate, because sometimes if you get these from mail order, it might be an invasive species that cannot be grown here in the United States, or it might harbor pests. So therefore, try to get your plants from a reputable source, either something that you can actually touch and look at, or if you know it's a reputable mail order plant. Right? Some of these plants that used to cost $10, $15 2 years ago, because of the craze, have now exploded to $400 for a cutting. So this is a wonderful hobby that you can have when you have space. Here in the Aligni residence, they have a huge window that is northeasterly facing. So my dad's orchids that have been like 4 or 5 years old have been growing really well. Sometimes they're just stepping on it now. So that's how much orchids my dad have. Also another tip. When you go to a box store, they're selling orchids. Some of the orchids are like $19. Look in their discounted section. Sometimes they sell these discounted orchids because it broke. Something broke. All right, this is still beautiful. Starting to have its own little baby leaf coming out. We have what it has, the aerated section of the root. Really great root system. I don't see any mold. Okay, there's no mold in here. But it's still beautiful. Look at this Phalaenopsis. Vibrant, still vibrant. Just because it broke. It probably had multiple inflorescence, but the top spike broke. But this is still beautiful. So for $7 versus $19, it's always great. Okay? So if you have any questions to where we can get these items or how we collect them, or if you have any other issues regarding your plants, if your plant needs rehabilitation, don't hesitate to call us. We will try to give you the correct sources if we don't have the answer, but otherwise, please enjoy this lovely and affordable hobby. Hoping to see you soon, and hopefully in future seminars we can teach you about foraging Maryland forest for edibles. Thank you.